Dear viewers, welcome to this video. I'm your friendly host, Ben Summers from Ben's History Videos, and let's begin. Almost everyone the world over knows the story of Titanic, be it through books or films, most famously James Cameron's epic 1997 blockbuster. There were 6 Australians on board, 2 passengers and 4 crew. In this video, I'll tell the story of one of the passengers. Evelyn Marsden was born on October 15th, 1883, in Stockyard Creek, South Australia. Stockyard Creek is located roughly 80 kilometres from the state's capital city, Adelaide, and is a ghost town nowadays. Like almost everyone of the era, Evelyn learned to horse ride. She also learned how to row as a member of the Murray Bridge Women's Rowing Club. After completing her schooling, Marsden trained to be a nurse. She gained work in Melbourne. Though passionate about her work, her fondness for the sea and her wanderlust proved too powerful. With some encouragement from her friends, in 1908 she left her job and headed from Melbourne to Britain on a White Star Line vessel called the Persic. Her parents were Annie Bradshaw and Walter Henry Marsden. Both hailed from Derbyshire, Great Britain. After landing in London, Evelyn Marsden travelled to Chesterfield, where her extended family warmly welcomed her. Among the people she met here was William Abel James. Born in Wales on October 5th, 1879, James worked as a ship's doctor on the route from London to Sydney. Marsden signed on to the Titanic on April 6, 1912, 4 days before the ill-fated maiden voyage. At the time, she lived at 7 West Marlands Terrace, now West Marlands Road in Southampton, not far from the Southampton docks the ship departed from on April 10, 1912. Marsden already had her sea legs. She had worked on board Titanic's sibling, the Royal Mail steamer Olympic. Titanic was the second of 3 identical vessels, Olympic being the first and Britannic being the third. Only the Olympic would enjoy a long, successful career. All 3 were built by Harland and Wolff of Belfast, Ireland for the White Star Line for the prestigious Southampton to New York run. They were designed to allow the White Star Line to compete with the Cunard Line, its chief rival on the transatlantic service from Southampton to New York. Marsden was employed as a stewardess. As a qualified nurse, she provided assistance to first-class passengers. It is standard practice for shipping lines to employ on-board medics. She received a monthly wage of £3 10 shillings. On the evening of April 14th, 1912, Lookout Frederick Fleet was perched high in the liner's crow's nest. At 11:40 p.m. ship's time, a dark grey mass loomed up out of the darkness directly ahead. Realizing the imminent danger, Fleet urgently rang the lookout's bell 3 times as a warning. He picked up the crow's nest's telephone to communicate with his superiors on the bridge, but despite their hurried attempts to take evasive action, a collision was unavoidable. The iceberg bumped along the ship's starboard or right-hand side, opening up 5 of the watertight compartments. Miss Mary Sloane, with whom Marsden shared a compartment, described the aftermath of the collision. "I never lost my head that dreadful night. When she struck at 11:45 and the engine stopped, I knew very well something was wrong. Dr. Simpson came and told me the mails were afloat. Things were pretty bad. He brought Miss Marsden and me into his room and gave us a little whiskey and water. I laughed and asked him if he thought we needed it, and he said we should. Miss Marsden was crying, and he was cross with her. He asked me if I was afraid, and I replied I was not. He said, well spoken like a true Ulster girl. He had to hurry away to see if there was anyone hurt. We helped him on with his great coat, and I never saw him again. I felt better after. Then I saw our dear old Dr. O'Loughlin. I asked him to tell me the worst. He said, "Child, things are very bad. I indeed got a lifebelt and got on deck. I went round my rooms to see if my passengers were all up and if they had lifebelts on. Poor Mr. Andrews came along, and I read in his face all I wanted to know." Marsden boarded lifeboat 16 at 1:35 a.m. Like many on the night, Marsden was reluctant to leave the ship, feeling safer on the brightly lit vessel than in a tiny lifeboat on the dark ocean. She needed to be persuaded by Mr. Joseph Bruce Ismay, chairman and managing director of the White Star Line. She offered to row to help keep warm in the freezing cold. Who would have ever thought that her rowing skills would become so crucially important, allowing her to help maneuver the lifeboat away from the sinking liner? Just 45 minutes later, at 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, 1912, Marsden and the other survivors, shivering in their open-topped wooden lifeboats, watched in terror as the great liner broke apart and vanished from sight. In its wake, the water furiously bubbled and frothed. Left behind was a frightened, screaming, seething mass of humanity, struggling vainly as the freezing water ruthlessly sucked the life out of them. Horrifyingly, some passengers were likely drowned in their cabins. Eventually, the screams from those in the water fell hauntingly silent. Very few survivors were recovered from the water. After hours of waiting, the morning brightness revealed a light on the horizon. Maneuvering cautiously through the dense ice field was the little Cunard liner RMS Carpathia, under the command of veteran Captain Arthur Rostron. In response to Titanic's desperate pleas for help, Carpathia had dashed 58 miles over 4 hours through the night to reach the scene. In a story filled with tragedy, Carpathia, its officers and crew, emerge as the heroes of the hour. The tragedy had rapidly become global news, and Marsden had been initially listed as missing. No doubt this caused considerable distress to her parents and siblings until they were greatly comforted by a brief telegram which read, "Safe, Evelyn." Despite surviving the sinking, Marsden was never called to provide evidence to the American or British inquiries. A few months after her ordeal, she married Welsh-born William Abel James on July 27th in Southampton. They had met during her stay in Britain and had already set a date before the sinking. As was the custom of the day, Marsden took his last name on marrying. In November 1912, the couple returned to South Australia on the ship Irishman. This piece appeared in the South Australian newspaper, the Daily Herald. Memories of the Titanic disaster were recalled on Saturday by the arrival at the outer harbour of the White Star steamer Irishman, which had on board 2 survivors from the ill-fated liner. Miss Evelyn Marsden, now the wife of Dr. James, surgeon on the Irishman, is travelling on the vessel with her husband. Mrs. James, who at the time of the great maritime mishap was a stewardess on the Titanic, is the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. W.H. Marsden of Hoyleton, South Australia. When the Irishman reached the wharf, Mrs. James went ashore and renewed her acquaintances with many of her old South Australian friends. The second officer of the Irishman, Mr. Joseph Boxall, was one of the fortunate ones to be saved from the Titanic, on which vessel he acted as fourth officer. Living for 15 months in the South Australian country town of Wallaroo, they then moved to Bondi in Sydney's eastern suburbs. On August 30th, 1938, Evelyn died at the age of 54, having never really recovered from the sinking. Dr. James died a week later on September 7th. They are buried together in Waverley Cemetery in Sydney's eastern suburbs. Thanks for watching this video, which I hope you found interesting and educational. Thank you also for spending time learning about how one Australian survived this legendary maritime tragedy. This video has been produced with generous assistance from different quarters. Please don't forget to like the video, comment underneath, and subscribe to the channel, which you can do by clicking the subscribe button in the description under the video. Further videos are currently in production, so please watch this space as usual.